Hi there and welcome to another PSC Tut spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele, and in today's tutorial I'm going to take you through how to create a 3D leaf from a texture photograph. And this tutorial was created by Brent Nelson, and it's a great little tutorial that takes you through the basic steps of mastering the warp tool and coming to terms with how you can manipulate flat images. We're going to be creating this image here, and you can see we've got this really cool little leaves on the corner, and these are all generated by starting out with the same leaf image that we've got here. And it's a brilliant little tutorial, and let's get started. All of the files that you need are linked to within the site. Some great textures there, so do check them out, and let's get started. I've loaded that picture up of the leaf in Photoshop. Now you might notice when you look at this image, it's actually facing a different way than the one in the tutorial. And it actually looks, I find, in this state that you're looking at the bottom of the leaf. But hit Command-T to rotate it, and I'm just going to flip it around. And it then, when you look at it again, if you look away and look back, it looks like you're looking down on top of the leaf. I don't know why that does that for me, but that's how I see it. So we're going to Command-T this image, and we're going to right-click on the layer, and we're going to go to Warp. Now on the tutorial it highlights which corners you need to start with first, and we're going to start with this top one up here, and we're just going to bring it straight down just to about there, and then we're going to grab this bottom leaf and we're going to bring that one up to about there, and then we're going to grab this little handle and we're just going to pull it around like so, and then pull this bottom one around again like so, and hit enter until you get something that looks a little bit like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit V on the keyboard. I'm going to move this to the right and zoom in, Z on the keyboard, grab my eraser tool, shrink it down a little bit, and I'm just going to get rid of this line just to see how we've done. Okay, that's not too bad. We've missed out this little area here, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just grab the clone tool, Alt click, and with a soft brush, just start to tie this together. Bring that up. Okay, now if you have a look at this line here, we can actually start to cut away that line. So I'm going to grab polygon tool, start about here, hit delete, Command deselect, grab my eraser tool, just get these edges so it's not too straight a line, a little bit too much there. Bring the hardness down. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's zoom out and see how that looks. And that looks okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to try and bring in a little bit of a bend into this, again with a bit more of the warp tool and maybe a little bit of the liquify tool as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command T again, right click, grab the warp tool, and I'm just going to bring this bottom part up to about there, straighten this up like so, and then I'm going to grab this top anchor, I'm going to move this over to about there, and then just straighten up. Across, bring this down just a bit. Just playing around till we get a leafy kind of shape going on. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to bend this in. Okay, and just tweaking all the little arms and anchors. Until we get something we're happy with. Hit enter. I'm going to quickly fly into the liquify tool. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, using this, the forward warp tool, going to bring my brush size down. I'm just going to push in just a little bit, and actually, if I just grab the right layers, and let's just move that in. Touch. In fact, that's probably too much, so I'm just going to go back a couple of steps. Bring that brush right down. Click on OK. And now we're just going to get this little bit of a lip. It's not perfect, and again, if you spend a little bit more time just playing around with that, you're going to create a nice little effect. But I'm pretty happy with that for now. Hit Command T again, right click, we're going to do a bit of perspective, and we're just going to bring in these anchors. Let's bring this up. Oh, looks pretty good. You don't want it too much, otherwise it's just going to fade off into the distance. So trying to get like it's just lying away from us. In fact, that's far too much. Okay. Right, next step. If we want to get the leaf to bend away from us, we're going to grab our selection tool, and we're just going to select this first half of our leaf, then hit Command T, then right click and warp, and we're only going to end up warping this area here. And what we're going to do is we're going to bend this down. So I'm just going to grab this bottom corner, this corner here, and just bend that right down. Okay, and then hit enter. And that's just going to give the impression that the leaf's bending down. And what you could do is you could go in, grab your burn tool, and lightly you could just darken this area here where it's bending, and that will give the impression the leaf's just bending down, but you don't have to do that bit. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer, so hit Command J, and I'm going to do it 3 or 4 times. That might be a little bit too many, but we can just hide them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to warp it so that we're going to show just some slight differences in them. So I'm going to V on the keyboard on our bottom layer. Let's turn these ones off for now. And I'm just going to move it off the screen, rotate it a bit, and I might scale it down just a bit and have that coming in from the top. Grab our next image, Command T, scale that one down. Oh, on the wrong layer there. Command T, scale that down. I might flip this vertically. Again, rotate that and bring that under. And bring it under our original layer so it just sneaks out the bottom. Like so. Grab this layer, again Command T. Let's scale this one down. that up and bring that below or the two layers until you get some kind of layout that you're happy with. In fact, I'm going to grab this layer again and just flip it horizontally. And then this last layer, scale that one down, flip it, and I'm going to have this just on top of this layer, about there. Maybe just bring it down a touch more. And again, just bring it below that bottom one, but it's going to sit there. We just need to make sure it's off slightly. Okay. So again, play around with the composition of the image that you're going to be converting until you get something that you like, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now, a simple way to add a bit of drop shadow is if we start with our top layer, this layer here, we double click on that layer, and let's see if I can do this so that we can see. We're going to click drop shadow on the left hand side, and then to make sure that we give it a bit of depth, we need to adjust each one accordingly, so playing around with opacity and stuff like that. So let's click on drop shadow, and you can see at the minute it's falling on this leaf here, so I'm just going to change the angle. Okay, and then you can just start to see it falling on the leaf below, and I'm going to increase the distance. I'm going to reduce the opacity. And then I'm going to click on OK. Actually, the size might just a bit of 18, that's good. And click on OK. And then we're going to move on to this leaf here, which sits on top of the leaf below. Again, drop shadow. Change the angle so it's falling underneath this little lip here, like so, and that just gives that little bit of an edge there. Okay, and click on OK. So you're just getting a feel for where those shadows are going to lie. The sun's probably hitting from here, and each one leaves a shadow on this side. Now I'm going to quickly insert at the bottom a new layer, and I'm going to fill that layer with white, and that's just going to be my background for now, just so we can see. And if we start on each layer that's going to fall onto the ground, so I'm going to have a look at this layer now, double click, drop shadow, and then have a look at how that's going to fall underneath. So the distance, I'm going to increase a bit, size, increase quite a bit, and reduce the opacity just a bit, and click on OK. I'm going to go back to this one here, our top layer, and again back to our drop shadow. And this is the great thing about applying these effects, is you can go back and adjust them afterwards. I'm going to increase the size just a bit and the opacity, and that looks pretty good. And as you're tweaking, just adjust. Okay, and finally we're going to do this layer here, and again same thing, get the distance right, size, and then work on your opacity, and click on OK. Right, next thing we need to do is to add our bevel and our emboss. So again, I'm going to start with our top leaf, and just double click on there, and we're going to select bevel and emboss on the left hand side. We're going to make sure that it's inner bevel, smooth, set to 100%, going up. Size is 65. 0 for the soften. Angle is going to be 143. Let's have a look how that looks. Okay, it looks a little bit too bloated at the minute, so let's just reduce some of this, reduce some of the size. A little bit more. You don't want to be too fine because it'll look like it's too flat, so that looks pretty good. Okay, the depth. Yeah, looks pretty good. And then let's come down to the opacity down here. Just reduce the opacity. And again, playing around with these, all I'm doing is looking at the edge, playing around with increasing the size, reduce my opacity down just a little bit. That's it. And again, having a look at the whole image, that looks pretty good. We're just trying to blend that line in around the side, but that looks pretty good. And then what we can do is just try and right click, copy the layer style, right click, paste the layer style, and I'll quickly add them by pasting the layer styles to our other layers. And if at any time you don't feel it looks quite right, you can pop back in and again and play around with each of those layer styles. Okay, last little thing is we're going to add a little bit of depth. So we're going to use a Gaussian blur for this. So we're going to select the leaf at the very bottom of our stack. So we're going to select this one here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click on our layer. We're going to convert it to a smart object. And then we're going to go to filter. And we're going to select blur, Gaussian blur, and set it to about 2.6. Let's have a look before we set it. Okay, a little bit too much for my composition, so just lowering it down just a bit. And I'm going to click on OK. So that one's just out of focus. In fact, because it's a smart filter, we can go straight back in, double click, and that's the great thing about smart filters. If we increase that a bit, click on OK, and then I'm just going to grab the one above it, and again I'm going to go to right click, convert to smart object. I'm going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and again just decrease it so it's a little bit more in focus because it's closer. So 0.2, there we go, just a touch. And by blurring those out on the sides, you're going to bring these ones into focus. So that's pretty much the tutorial. So thanks very much to Brent for taking us through using the warp tool and applying some simple little filters to create a 3D effect for a leaf. I think it'll be a great tutorial for beginners, just playing around with the warp tool and coming to terms with it. And I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through how to create a 3D leaf from a textured photograph.